What's up, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Links and Locks podcast. I'm Jason Sobel from GolfBet. He is Len Hochberg from RotoWire, and we're here to break down, deep breath, believe it or not, we have finally reached the final event, the 46th of 46 PGA Tour regular season events. The playoffs start next week, but guys playing for their lives, playing for their careers this week at Sedgefield, back down the Southeast, a North Carolina-based event. Len, what's going on? How are you doing? And what are you looking at this week?
Doing well, Jason. 46 events. It's only felt like 72. Yeah, no, it does come by every year fast. We do seem to circle back pretty quickly. The Wyndham is always the tournament within the tournament. Of course, you want to win the tournament, but there's so many other factors at play. Guys trying to get into the top 125 and all. Where to start? Well, as I just checked the weather, there's a lot of rain in the forecast this week. So we might, even after this podcast, I don't want to forget to say this, that tee times may make a difference this week. You'll have to check the forecast closer to the lock, see where your guy is, and maybe make a change based on the tee time. But otherwise, Sedgefield been around for a long time. Been a short course, 7,100 yards, even though it's only a par 70. Driving accuracy matters a little bit this week. The fairways are pretty narrow. After that, it's one big green light special. You're in the fairway and you're not far away, and the greens are pretty big for a short course. So this could turn into a putting contest. It could turn into a birdie fest. I'm looking at those type of guys, even though we only had 15 under last year with Kevin Kisner. There was a little bit of weather last year as well. And for whatever reason, maybe it's just in my head, it just seems like there are more horses for the course at the Wyndham at Sedgefield than just about any other place. And so we have to decide, I have to decide, you have to decide how many of those guys are going to stay on the horse and how many are going to fall off. Yeah,
there's certainly guys who tend to play well here year after year after year, a couple of big time course horses at this one. One thing I have found and wrote about in my preview this week, of the 33 players over the last 3 years who are on the bubble, between 120 and 130 on the money list going into the Wyndham, the final event of the season the last 3 years, you might think, hey, narrative play, these guys are motivated. Even those who already have their cards in other ways that are exempt for the coming season, they want to get into the playoffs, the top 125. Those players largely didn't play that well. 4 top 10s of those 33 players, and all 4 of those players had already kept their cards. And a whole lot of missed cuts. I'm looking at more than 40% of the players who were on the bubble at the Wyndham Championship missed the cut over the last 3 years. So I know there's a nice little narrative where we always talk about motivation, and those who are motivated might play better golf. It doesn't, or at least hasn't, seemed to work out at this one. All right, let's get to the top of the board. We're going through our favorite plays on DFS this week, looking at DraftKings. Started out with Will Zalatoris. There must have been 1 or 2 other events where Zalatoris played in a smaller field where he was the most expensive player. I can't remember offhand, but he is indeed the highest salaried player in DFS on DraftKings this week, $10,900, followed by one of those course horses, Webb Simpson at 10-7, then Shane Lowry, Sungjae Im, Billy Horschel, and we'll get down into the nines and group them all together. Russell Henley, Corey Connors, Tyrrell Hatton, Adam Scott, Harold Varner. Len, how are you starting things out? What are you looking at from the top of the board?
Yeah, the way I'm going to start out at the top of the board is to ignore and avoid the top of the board.
Wow.
Will Zalatoris, certainly deserving of being the top guy in the field at 10,900. We saw again last week. He actually played better than I thought last week, but I don't think it really disputed the narrative, my whatever, that he plays better on longer, harder tracks. That's where he can separate himself from most of the other golfers, that on the easier courses, they can keep up with him. And, I don't see him at this price doing it. And I'm also going to avoid Webb Simpson. And this is going to be, I don't know, blasphemy or something, because he has played here well every year, seemingly. I think he has 5 straight top 7s, in second, third, just great every year. But this is not the same Webb Simpson who was here last year. There seem to be 3 Webb Simpson courses: Sedgefield, and then the RSM, and then the RBC. And I have to remember all these, yeah. And so he was 7th here last year, 8th at the RSM, but then he did not deliver at the RBC. He was 59th there. So that's a warning sign for me that Webb Simpson is really falling off his game if he can't deliver there. And he was 10-6 last year. Now he's up to 10-7. He hasn't had a top 10 anywhere in the world since the RSM last November. Bit of a sucker play. I think I was going to try to couch it some other way. I didn't want to say sucker play, but all right, it's out there. I like Shane Lowry at 10-6. I like some JM at 10-5. Billy Horschel plays here at 10,300. And I like Russell Henley at 9,800. I felt like spending more time talking about guys I didn't like, but there you go.
Okay, so there aren't a whole lot of guys here that I'm targeting either. I will probably dip down more into the 8,000s, have a more balanced lineup this week. I disagree with you on Zalatoris. I really like Zalatoris. Okay. He improved by multiple strokes in both of his weekend rounds. Last week in Detroit, got off to a little bit of a sluggish start, but looked really good on the weekend. I'm just waiting for it to happen. As we've seen the last couple of weeks with Tony Finau playing so well, Patrick Cantlay played well last week. The cream tends to rise to the top when we're looking at an event with a somewhat inferior field. That's what we have again this week. I think Zalatoris looks around and goes, I'm the best player here. I should win this thing. And whether he wins or not, I do think he's going to be very close. I'll have some Zalatoris. I agree with you, though, on Webb Simpson. I wrote him up in my preview just because I have one rule, Len, that when a player names one of his kids after the tournament sponsor, you essentially have to have some sort of investment in them. But I will be underweight on Webb Simpson compared with most of the DFS players out there. Lowry, Horschel, none of them interest me a whole lot. I like all of them. I don't love any of them. Russell Henley, my favorite outright play on the board this week, coming off a 10th place finish last week. He's played less golf than just about anybody over the course of the last 3 or 4 months. And at a time of the year when a lot of guys are running on fumes, I think Russell Henley has some gas in the tank, and I think he could have a really good week. Remember, last year, for the first time in more than 20 years, Russell Henley became a player who lost by 1 stroke and didn't cash top 5 tickets in the betting marketplace. He finished in 7th place, losing by 1 because there was a 6-man playoff won by Kevin Kisner here. But I do like Russell Henley to avenge that loss this year. All right, getting down to the 8,000, starts with Denny McCarthy, and then we get to Siwoo Kim, talk about horses right there. Kevin Kisner, another one. Tom Kim, don't let that J in front of his name fool you. He wants to be called Tom Kim these days. Taylor Pendrith, Christian Bezadenhout, Brian Harmon, JT Poston, Aaron Wise, Justin Rose, and Davis Riley. What are you looking at?
Yeah, I'm looking at a lot of guys here that I do like, and I don't know if I can fit 4 8,000s in my lineup. I'd have to really do the math here, but there are 4 guys here who, if I could fit them all in, I think I would. Siwoo Kim, yeah, course horse, top 5 here every year, but unlike Webb Simpson, playing pretty well. He's a lot more volatile than your average golfer. He's apt to really play well and really stink up the joint, but he's coming off a couple of top 15s, played very well last week. Kevin Kisner, I'm a little concerned. I really was big on Kisner here and pretty much everywhere last week, and he didn't putt very well. And if Kevin Kisner can't putt, well, then he's not even an average golfer. But he's 87. He's the defending champion. He was 3rd the year before. He's another guy, likes this Carolina, Georgia area. Tom Kim, the Mel Ott of golf in 6 letters, quick, get in, get out. He picked up his card. So you think maybe he doesn't have something to play for this week, but he surely, if he wants to, if he wins, he could get into the playoffs. That's the only way into the playoffs for him now. And winning, of course, is multiple year exemption. And JT Poston, the 2019 winner, 8,200, recent winner at the Deere, playing very well, was 11th last time at the 3M, which told me that he hasn't sat back on his laurels after winning. Those four guys, really strong plays for me.
Yeah, so I'm in on two of those. I have a few more of my own to add. Siwoo Kim. My only problem with Kim is I think everybody's going to be on him this week. I think there's going to be more Siwoo Kim ownership than even Webb Simpson or Zalatoris or anybody else. And so that might make me fade him just a little bit. I mean, we saw, what was it, a couple of weeks ago, or actually this past week, Patrick Cantlay in some contests was up to 40% owned. And as it turns out, a share of second place, probably money well spent. Might be the same thing for Siwoo Kim, but at some point I may just fade him just because I want to be a little contrarian. I do like Tom Kim again, playing with house money a little bit and nothing left to prove. He's got his card locked up for next season. Now he can play a little looser, a little more freedom for him. So I do like that. Christian Bezuidenhout has been very good recently. 4 top 20s in his last 7 starts. Brian Harman playing very well right now. He's got 2 top 10s in his last 3 and has played well at this course. He's seemingly all or nothing on this one. He's got 6 missed cuts and 9 starts, but he's also got a 3rd place finish and a 6th place finish. Essentially, when Harm's playing well, he plays really well here. Davis Riley's price continues to drop, coming off another missed cut. But look, he's got the talent. I still think he's a really good player. This could be a nice buy low spot on Davis Riley. And then Aaron Wise at 8,100, and I'll dip down just a little bit into the 7,000s with Keith Mitchell. Essentially 2 guys that I think are undervalued on a weekly basis. I think these 2 have the talent to be top 20 players in the world. Right now, Wise is 40th and Mitchell is 55th. And I just think they're really good players. I don't know that this is the week for them, but I also don't want to miss out after betting them and playing them in DFS pretty much the entire year. I don't want to miss out on a big week from either of them, so I'll have a little Wise and Mitchell as well. All right, getting down to the 7,000s. I have a feeling you got a lot of names here, Len.
Yeah, and there are some good plays here as well, and I'm going to have trouble in the 6s, so I'm certainly going to like some guys here. A couple of guys who've been chalk week the last 2 weeks. 2 weeks ago, it was Adam Svensson chalk week, crash and burn. Last week, Mark Hubbard chalk week, crash and burn. This has no basis in fact, but when so many people like the guy, it really turns me off and makes me think not everyone can be right. But there was reason to like both their games, and I do like both their games this week. Hubbard at 7,900. He's another guy. The short courses are his friend. He really has trouble on the longer tracks. I like him at 79. Scott Stallings delivered for me last week, another top 10. He's 37 years old and he hasn't won in a while, but this may be the best stretch of golf he's ever played in his career. I think 4 top 10s in his last 6 starts, 7,800, probably going to be a popular play based on recency bias. Kevin Streelman did not have a great year. He seemingly turned his season around at the Travelers. Of course, it would be at the Travelers for Kevin Streelman. He had a top 25 there, and then he was runner-up at the Barbasol. Yeah, it was the Barbasol, but he was 7th here last year. He's made 6 of 7 Wyndham cuts. Adam Svensson, 75, and maybe even Nick Hardy at 7,300. We talked about guys outside the top 125. I don't know how he's 140th. He's 25th in greens in regulation, 62nd in putting. That should be better than where he's at right now.
All right, I've got a bunch of names I'll throw at you. These are varying degrees of confidence. All of them can play pretty well. Sebastian Munoz, actually listed at 7,700. That's a really good price for a guy who's a tremendous ball striker. Like him a lot. Alex Smalley, and this is going to be a theme here for guys in the 7,000s and 6,000s. Coming off a missed cut last week. I got Smalley, Hubbard, Glidgick, all coming off missed cuts. All guys that are not far off from playing some really good golf. And so I think you can get them maybe a little bit of a buy low price, maybe a little bit of a suppressed ownership based on the fact that they did miss the cut last week. By comparison, Callum Tarrant is a guy that is running red hot right now. I still like him, but now everyone's onto his game, and I may have to throttle back a little bit on my Callum Tarrant love, even though he's been paying off recently. Aaron Rye, I can get behind a little bit. Really like Matthew Neesmith anytime the PGA Tour is in a ball strikers golf course in the Southeast, like a Harbor Town, like an RSM. This one should really suit Matthew Neesmith. Has not played great in the past. Only one made cut in 3 starts, but he's a better player now than he was before. I will have a lot of Matthew Neesmith this week. Maybe a little Tyler Duncan, maybe a little David Lipsky. And then I can't believe, Len, you didn't mention your guy, Grayson Sigg. I guess I like him more than you do this week. You mentioned him every week on the podcast. I really like him. This could be the week for him.
Yeah, he missed the cut last week. One of the hardest things for me, I'm getting better at, and I think it's kind of hard for everyone, is to go back to a guy who not only missed the cut the week before, but if he burned you, if you played him and he missed the cut, to go back to him a second week in a row, you just don't want to be an idiot twice, I guess, or I don't want to be, fool me once, whatever it is, shame on me. But I think you uttered a sentence there that I don't think I had ever heard before. I've got to cut back on my Callum Tarrant. That's never been uttered in human history before. But I hear you on Callum Tarrant. Yeah, I mean, it's getting dicey down around here.
Yeah, and you mentioned 6,000's not a lot of love for some guys here. I've got a bunch of names written down, none of which I'm really that into. Hayden Buckley, Brandon Wu, Chesson Hadley, Michael Gligic, Justin Lauer, Rafa Cabrera-Bello, Doc Redman, Bo Hogue. I don't mind any one of them singularly, kind of at the bottom of a lineup, letting me get to some more expensive players, but there's not one that I point to and I go, that's the guy this week. This guy is going to pay off.
Well, I don't know if this is good or bad, but I have Hayden Buckley and Chesson Hadley on my list as 2. On my list as well, and since I always try and at least throw somebody out 6,500 or less, and this really was the hardest week for me, and right now these are names I don't think I've ever said out loud before. Andrew Novak 6,500, Jonathan Bird 6,400. Not even sure where I like them best among the 65 and lower, but yeah.
Who's gone through their life without saying the name Jonathan Bird out loud?
Well, right.
No, a hole-in-one to win a PGA Tour event.
Right. He's made the cut 10 of 14 years at the Wyndham. So there is that. But Andrew Novak I had never said before.
Yeah. Okay. I'll give you that one. Jonathan Bird, interesting play. I don't mind that one. Clemson guy. All right. Let's make our own lineup. We do it every week here on the pod. Going back and forth, a 6-man lineup, 50,000 to spend. Len, why don't you kick it off for us?
Yeah, I'm gonna go right in the middle, right in the sweet spot. I'll probably play Siwoo Kim in some of mine, but you do raise an excellent point that he's going to be very heavily owned, and this guy probably is too, but maybe not as much. Ju Young Kim, Tom Kim, 8,600, probably playing loose and easy this week, and gosh, he's 34th in the world. He's better than most of the other players in this field.
All aboard the tank engine. We're buying tickets. Okay, I don't mind that play whatsoever. I'm sure we're going to spend up a little bit at some point, but I mentioned a couple of guys that I really like, kind of in the low 7,000s. I'll go after one here. This is a little bit of a hunch play. It's a little bit of an educated play, but Matthew Neesmith at 7,200, telling you, really good ball striker. He's one of the better ball strikers of players of his ilk. I'm not saying he's better than top 10 players out there in the world, but of the guys who are sort of, on the outskirts, the fringes of being solid PGA Tour players. Matthew Neesmith, really good iron play, and also tends to thrive on Bermuda greens in the Southeast. So I'll put him in there at 7,200, try to save us some money.
Good play. Yeah, I'm going to go in the 7s, stay in the 7s, and go to Mark Hubbard at 79. Very disappointing last week for everyone who played him. But he had made 8 straight cuts before last week's missed cut. And he's made 3 straight cuts at the Wyndham, 2 of them top 25s. Good putter. As I mentioned, his big shortcoming is being short off the tee. That won't be an issue this week.
All right. I know this guy burned you last week with a missed cut, and you mentioned him on the pod every single week. Prior to that missed cut, Grayson Sigg was 7th at the 3M, 26th at the Barracudas, 27th at the Barbasol, 16th of the John Deere. Look, get over it. I know he lost you money last week. He's going to make you some money this week. At 7,100, I'm throwing Grayson Sig in there. And boy, we've got a lot of money left to spend.
So we just had Hubbard and Sig are 15,000 and all right, well, I'm not, what do we got?
We're at 19-2, 9,600.
Oh my gosh, we've got a ton. We've got a ton here. So yeah, I'm gonna take I don't know where I'm gonna go, either Kevin Kisner or Russell Henley. Russell Henley, it's amazing how he can contend being such a mediocre putter, but he is so good getting from the tee box onto the green. And we know how close he came here last year. It's probably been circled on his calendar ever since last year at this time. Russell Henley, 9,800.
Love the play. As I mentioned earlier, last week he was the worst putter, strokes gained, of the top 25 on the final leaderboard, but he only trailed Tony Finau in strokes gained tee to green. If he just putts a little bit better, story of his life, he can certainly contend again this week. All right, we've got 9,400 left. Tyrrell Hatton, Adam Scott, Harold Varner, Denny McCarthy, Siwoo Kim. All right, he's going to be like 99% owned this week, but at least we have a little bit of a different lineup, saving 600, leaving it on the table. I'm going to throw him in there. There's the lineup. Russell Henley, Mark Hubbard, Tom Kim, Siwoo Kim, Matthew Neesmith, and Grayson Sig. What do you think?
Yeah, I always think when we see specific to Siwoo Kim, yes, he's going to be highly owned. But if you're anyone listening, if you think he's going to win, don't double cross yourself. Play the guy you think is going to win or could be right there. There are 5 other guys to find differential from the other players in your game.
Yeah, I like that idea. All right, thanks to everybody out there for listening to this edition of the Links and Locks podcast. Remember, you can find us everywhere you find your favorite podcast. Download, subscribe, rate, listen every single week. For Len Hochberg, I'm Jason Sobel. Good luck with your DFS plays for this week's Wyndham Championship. Here's hoping you hit the green.